The big FUD about Hyperliquid is like this is a DYDX 2.0. But I think it's reached like, we're talking about 25 to 30% of Bybit's volume, like 10%, even higher of Binance's volume on like a monthly basis. It's like reached this kind of a escape velocity. So if you walk that market share up to, from 10 to 20%, and you have a little bit of a multiple expansion because like it's seen as not going away anymore, like you can pretty easily get to like 40 or $50.
Nothing said on the Hivemind is a recommendation to buy or sell securities or tokens. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only, and any views expressed by anyone on the show are solely our own opinions, not financial advice.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hivemind podcast. The goal of the podcast is to provide an inside look into what we like to call the Delphi Hivemind, bringing together some of our brightest minds from each of the divisions to share insights, alpha, and shitposts. Today with us, we have the usual crew: Ceteris Paribus, head of our institutional research arm; Jan Lieberman, managing partner at Delphi Ventures and Ventures associate, shitcoin scavenger; Duncan, also known as Flood Capital. What's your title at Ventures now? You're scout or something?
Yeah, Jan. I don't know, Jan. What's my title?
I don't know, Duncan. What's your title?
Jan's personal assistant at Ventures.
I feel like scout suits you. Like Boy Scout for Ventures. And yeah, I'm Jose. I lead Delphi Labs, our protocol R&D arm, focused on incubating new Web3 primitives. Since when we last spoke was after Denver, right? It's been pretty brutal markets, choppy, generally down. But as we're talking today, Bitcoin's at 84K. ETH's
Are we not
bounced
up from then? Or no?
I'm not sure.
Bitcoin might be flat, but like stuff like ETH and Sol are definitely
Total
down.
cap is definitely down.
Yeah. I feel like we're down.
Yeah,
I'm definitely personally down. But yeah, as we speak today, ETH's bounced back above 2K. Bitcoin's at 84K. Hype's above $15. What are we thinking? Is the bottom in? Like, or what? Is this just a bounce? How are you guys feeling?
I feel, well, the thing is, JPOW speaks after this pod today, and that's gonna probably be the material driver of where we go next from here. So I don't know. For me, over the past like few months, ever since all this tariff stuff and trade war and just macro uncertainty started, as I said, I've just kind of been going with the flow. No strong opinions. It's just like not my place.
Chris Berniski style, riding the wave.
riding the wave. It does.
Yeah,
like I was thinking yesterday though, like, wow, I really forgot how it kind of feels with prices going up every day. Like, if you think about it, even in 2024, beginning of the year was pretty good, sure, but then we chopped until the election, right? And then we just got 2 months of craziness of up only every day. And you're just thinking, wow, this is never going to end. Everything is perfect. We're just going to keep going up every day all 2025. And now it's just been down only. And it feels like we've been chopping for the last week now.
Here's a good snapshot in time. I remember in March 2024, I was like criticizing WIF, and our head of HR called me a moron in the full company chat. So that's what it feels like when prices are going up every day.
Yeah. So yeah, what do we think? I mean, there's a lot of people. I feel like I've seen more macro threads than ever, which is generally like close to a bottom when people start uncertainties coming, go to cash, tariffs, etc. But also,
I did see
yeah.
this chart yesterday that the amount of articles in the news on like the stock market and economic uncertainty, it charts it from like back in the 70s or 80s or something, right? Every time there's kind of like a big crisis. And right now is the highest it's ever been. Articles on like economic
they're just
and
flooding Trump.
Yeah.
Financial. So it's like it's getting more attention probably than what we've actually seen in the market, right?
Well, yeah, the biggest dislocation basically between like sentiment and data is right now. Like everyone is max bearish. The economy's in a pretty decent spot. Inflation is like surprising to the downside. So I think, you know, these are pretty good setups to take some swing. I don't if as a bottom in, it's hard to say, right? Like, you know, it's the future is kind of a probability distribution, and so there's always a chance that you know, their interest in getting rates down supersedes like their support for the market to the extent that, you know, asset values come down. So basically, like the market and the economy is kind of propped up by the highest spending demographic, and the highest spending demographic really did that because asset prices were very high, and so you have the risk of kind of like, you know, reflexivity to the downside.
There's a
Whereas
lot of
asset prices come
reflexivity.
down, spending comes down, and it can get bad that way. So, you know, that's kind of what can cause a recession realistically. Just other than that, data looks pretty good. So, you know, if that doesn't happen, I don't see there being like a lot more downside. I don't necessarily think we're in a world where we go up, but I mean, I think in the long run, 84K is a pretty good entry on BTC. Yeah.
Oh, what are the kids calling it these days? A vibe session?
Yeah, but no, there are like, I think for if you like corporate America, the reason why they're all worried is because the uncertainty is so high, right? And from their point of view, they need to know is the tariff thing. For instance, like the aluminum industry, they need like 8 to 10 years to onshore that back to the U.S. And so, from their perspective, it's like, okay,
How the fuck
we'll
does
build.
it take 10 years?
I don't know, but
Like,
I've,
what? That's cap. The U.S. went from like being a farm country to the biggest industrial
I
power
know
in
if you
like
listen to
3 years
people
during
in
the
the
war.
okay, I'm not an
10
expert in the
years?
aluminum. I'm not an expert in the aluminum industry, but if you listen to experts in the aluminum industry, they say it'll take like 8 to 10 years. And so that's kind of like the biggest uncertainty. Because even I guess if you get like a 4-year commitment from Trump, right? Then you kind of need Vance to win too. Or you could see like maybe the Democrat, like that's the whole uncertainty in the economy right now is people don't know, should we take these very long-term capital intensive, lots of upfront cost investments, right? Like can we get assurances that this stuff is going to be permanent now for at least the next like at least the whole term, right? And so I think once that kind of gets more clarity, that's what the market just wants. It just wants clarity, right? On like the absolute direction. And that's what it seems like a lot of people are waiting on, at least from like corporate America.
Yeah, it's tough because if you like threaten tariffs, then you need to be willing to follow through with it, right? At some point, and to follow through with it, it does need to be like a long-term commitment because you're promising companies that they won't face tariffs if they build in the U.S. and stuff like that. And those are, yeah, like you said, very long, expensive commitments and likely to be uncompetitive if tariffs get like revoked. So if he's just trying to use it to get reciprocal tariffs, which it seems to be what most people think, then companies, it's tough for companies to make a real commitment until they know what the actual rate is, right? Because like 30% or 40% to 10% is like massively different in terms of the number of profitable like investments you can make in the US, right? If tariffs are 40%, then probably a lot of production can be onshored, right? You have like a massive margin to play with. If it's 10%, then it's like totally different. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but I think on the tariff side, you know, yeah, the goal is you have to actually follow through the bark with bite and implement them. Otherwise, no one will kind of, you know, rescind theirs. But I don't know if that is necessarily being applied to all of them in the sense that there are, I think, more permanent like tariffs on industries that he wants to onshore in the interest of kind of you know, long-term health of the U.S. and independence.
Yeah. I think if we go back to the last episode, what we talked about, like the 3 things that are kind of scary. or this tariff stuff we just covered. The refinancing cycle coming up, where it's like, rates were at basically 0% in 2020. Now it's like the first 5-year mark, and rates are much higher. So if people have to refinance at this higher rate, like that could cause the deleveraging. And then also the Doge cuts, which like I don't think we've really got a ton of clarity on any of those. So still probably like Jan says, I think there's not a great case for up on US equities. But like, maybe Bitcoin could hang in a bit more to start to recorrelate to gold a bit. I think alts got really smoked, crypto specifically. And there is like some coins that just got down to like a valuation that is attractive, even if like there's a longer digestion period of like uncertainty in the market. So yeah, I do think crypto kind of got overly bearish on some coins. Obviously, I think a lot of coins are still super overvalued, but there's maybe pockets of opportunity. Yeah, so I guess that's kind of my thinking. There's still like these pretty big uncertainties in macro land, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of uncertainties within crypto. I have a pretty
Yeah.
clear idea of what's going to. I think I have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen over the next year. And like it's pretty. I think it's also pretty clear what kind of like coins will do best if we go back to being risk on, right?
Well, I don't know. Do you think memes are going to do the best again?
No, but I think like Sol will do well. I think Hype will do well because these are all kind of just trading coins that kind of make their profit off of like just trading activity, right?
Yeah, there's more activity.
And so obviously people trade like perps and stuff when prices are going down, but there does hit a point of like apathy.
No, people love perps in the chop. Like,
yeah, but you still get more
nothing's
volume.
happening, and everyone's a gambling addict. But I guess
no, but it is euthanasia roller coaster though, because you know people are getting chopped, they're losing money, and there's not new money coming into the space. So like it's still high, but it's declining.
Yeah. But I feel like this level is like pretty good, right? We're not like raging, but it's like there's been a lot of volatility. There's been a lot of volume on these things. Like the meme coins have gotten hit pretty hard, but I don't know. As my proxy for how the meme coins are doing, I watch like the pump fund revenue and banana revenue, and it seems to have kind of bottomed. And it's not terrible. So I think crypto specifically, and that's what makes this hard, is like crypto specifically, there's been a ton of bullish catalysts, like all these lawsuits getting dropped, market structure bill, the strategic Bitcoin reserve, like that's huge, I think long term, like really, really huge, but it's just like been overshadowed by the macro stuff. So I think if like Bitcoin can maybe recorrelate to gold a little bit, which is like pushing new highs, or just like other equity markets around the world have been doing decently, then I think we're not in a terrible spot, especially for some of these coins that have just gotten hit really hard and like are trading at somewhat attractive valuations.
Yeah, I think it would probably be good to which Cedros mentioned in terms of having a good idea of what's going to do well when things start bouncing again. Might be fun to dive into that a bit, but more specifically, I guess you do have the kind of the assumed blue chips now, right? Like you mentioned, Hype and Sol and some others. And so if memes don't necessarily do well, you don't have the dilutive effect, and you kind of have the majors potentially getting an outsized bid relative to everything else, which is I think constructive for the space, because we don't necessarily want everything to rise. We'd rather have good things do well, because that motivates new capital to come into the space, because there's logic to what does well and what doesn't, and makes people confident that they can kind of rationalize having an edge. And then the question is like, I mean, memes probably come back.
They definitely will, but it's not going to be the same ones. It's going to be a coin we don't even know about yet.
Okay, but it's different than saying a coin, right? Because that's not memes coming back.
Okay, well, it's going to be
like broad-based rallies? I think, I guess we can chat through how people see the meme space.
Like I think
moves?
Whiff
Do you
is
think it
fully
actually-
dead. I think Whiff is just cooked. Sorry, Jason. But like something like that is not coming. I don't think it's coming back. Or like any of these old memes that had like insane runs. Like I think it's like going to be a Bowden type scenario where they had a crazy run and they're dead, and it's like you're gonna have different new ones come back. Or
Do you think though that new memes can get back to these like $1 billion valuations?
yeah,
Because like for
Like BTC
instance,
at all-time high, yes.
like the liquidity on them is so thin. Like that SPX 6900 one, like when that was pumping, it's like $1 billion market cap with like a $3 million liquidity pool or something, like before it got any sex listings. And it's like those, like, you know, those
I
things
agree.
can get to insane value.
I don't know if that's the perfect way to look at it, though. I think like liquidity matters, but that's more so the size of the door on the way out, right? But in terms of overall activity, it's just volume. Like how much money is churning in and out of that thing on a 24-hour basis is more important for the context of like.
But it's easier to push it up, I guess. Like.
Yeah, but it's if like if you have, you know, $200-300 million worth of volume, that means a lot of people are dumping into this, right? So it's like, yes, it's easier to push it up, but you still need to offset that selling.
Like the delta between the two usually isn't huge, but you also can just like create these massive candles. Like one guy comes in and buys like a few million, but it's like up 100%, and then it's like the whole reflexive nature of like people will pile in, and then it just like, oh, now this is worth $1 billion. And it's like the whales or the devs who like bundled it or just like kind of slowly distribute. Like they don't full stack.
One way I think you can rationalize memes coming back is if the blue chips appreciate to a point where it's like, all right, I don't know how much more juice there's left to squeeze out of this play, so I need to just go further out on the risk curve and gamble.
Yeah, like that Giga coin, the Giga Chad coin, like. Apparently that was just, I don't know if this is true. This is complete conjecture, but apparently this was like super supply controlled, and they just like walked this thing up like every month. They had like 12 monthly candles close green, and then it just like went to zero. Because like the people who own all the supply like know that this is a lot about perception and stuff, and it's like you buy, like the whole thing with the meme coin is like you buy it if there's good memes and the price is going up. Like that's the fundamental. So like if they control the whole supply and walk it up slowly over time and just like slowly distribute, then I think like that'll definitely happen again.
Yeah, I legit don't know if I'll buy another meme again.
Oh my god!
Like,
you remember when you were shit talking me about GOAT on this podcast?
I mean, GOAT did go to like 1.5 bill though.
Yeah, it did, but now it's at zero.
Yeah, as is everything.
That's good to hear, though. See, that's what we need. We need the market participants to be like, okay, I'm not touching memes again.
Yeah, I think memes will probably come back. I think like SPX I've been looking at actually. Just like the Murad, don't want to fade the Murad cult.
Is
He
Murad
actually
even
showed it to
tweeting
me.
though, or does he
I
just have
told you.
auto tweets on that are just like
they read like auto tweets.
Yeah, believe
Yeah.
in something.
He showed it to me at like 25 mil market cap in token 2049. I did not buy.
All right. Do you want to talk about like some of this other stuff?
Wait, but
Yeah.
one.
We want to go through Hyperliquid.
Can we talk about the meme coins, like last point on it?
Yeah, go
and
for
just
it.
curious for people's take. So let's say like Bitcoin goes back to 100K like next week. Do you think enough time has passed where people like have kind of forgotten how fucked they got on meme coins, where like there's still appetite there? Or like, do you think it's like something like, okay, this will reemerge in like, 6 months from now? I kind of think there needs to be like a time digestion.
I don't know. I think people are like, make it all back in one trade. We're going to all-time highs, animal spirits. Like people forget very quickly. One pump and it's like, oh shit. Like what's the next
one?
But
these memes are just still so cooked though. Like if Bitcoin goes up to 100K, like all these memes are still going to be down 90%.
Yeah, so people are going to see that as like, oh, they got tons of room to go.
Cheap.
Okay, let's see. Okay, that was my last thing.
Yeah. But maybe like, I guess, what are people bullish on? Maybe we could do a quick round of that. That's what people really care about. Obviously, maybe we could start with Hyperliquid. You did a big post about it, Duncan. That got a lot of views among your scavenger followers. What did you What did you? Yeah, you want to give us the TLDR?
Yeah, I put this out a couple days ago. And yeah, so hype got down to like $12. And I was just like playing around with the numbers and its growth. And I was like, okay, this becomes like really attractive here. I think so. Right now it's about 10%. And I'm doing the market share. I'm doing like the volume numbers based on like market share versus Binance. So it's like as a good reference point, because I think that shows like the escape velocity it's reached relative to like all these other DEX plays. And it's like because I think the big the big FUD about Hyperliquid is like this is a DYDX 2.0, right? Like these volumes, like someone's gonna come out, launch a new DEX, and then all these volumes are gonna disappear. So like, how are you putting like any sort of multiple on it? But I think it's reached like we're talking about 25 to 30% of Bybit's volume, like 10%, even higher. Of Binance's volume on like a monthly basis. It's like reached this kind of a escape velocity. And also like, those exchanges have a lot of volume that's like at a very, very low fee tier, like even like negative rebate. So all the fees on Hyperliquid are pretty transparent. So it's actually probably like for fee paying customers, like at that fee tier on the perp side, it could be an even higher percentage. And basically at like between 10 and $15 and the 10% of market share, if you add the circulating tokens plus the team tokens, so not the treasury tokens, Hyperliquid is trading between like an 8 to 12x multiple, which is pretty attractive. And it was only at a 2% market share 6 months ago. So if you walk that market share up to from 10 to 20%, and you have a little bit of a multiple expansion because like it's seen as not going away anymore, like you can pretty easily get to like 40 or $50 at like 15 to 20x multiple on 20% of Binance's volume, like 15 to 20% of Binance's volume. So I think that, and then it's like, okay, like what's the case for this happening? I think that the build out of their spot markets is really big. So this protocol Hyperunit has essentially like onboarded native BTC where you can trade native BTC on Hyperliquid.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not native BTC. You can't say that.
For people who don't care about it, it's native. You can deposit and withdraw BTC on Hyperliquid. And then
it's as native as I mean,
it's not native at all.
I know, but it's not a wrapped version.
Yes, it is.
Sense where you can
wrapped.
withdraw.
It is wrapped.
With no
wrapped by a multisig.
Yeah, instead of a custodian.
Just because it's not tokenized doesn't mean
For
it's not wrapped.
people who don't care about this stuff, it's like, oh, I can take BTC with no
That's a
KYC
massive qualifier
and deposit it on Hyperliquid. Like functionally, day to day, obviously the security guarantee.
You could say that about WBTC though.
No,
you could say that about all the versions of Bitcoin.
To get KYC free leverage with WBTC, you can borrow against it on Aave, but I don't think there's nowhere you can use it as like collateral, which is the plan. So they have BTC live, they're launching ETH and Sol, and then stocks next. And once those things get like liquid enough, then you can use those as margin on Hyperliquid, which is like a huge market, which I think kind of like goes to like the Hozal finance blockchain.
Sorry, they're launching
idea
stocks.
Yeah. So
yeah, Hyperliquid is very much like a 0 or 100 type protocol.
Yeah. So it's basically that is going to help on the perps volume side. And then, the other side is if they have all this liquidity, right? And like this really amazing product on the perps side, and then the spot side, it's like an order book as well. Just like fundamentally, those technologies are like better than a Jupiter perps or like a Radium. And so I think a lot of teams who choose to build on EVM are going to choose to build on Hyperliquid because they have this product and build off of that product. So like to think it becomes, number two, like the third like most used or fourth largest most used chain, I don't think is insane. And that could be like another $50 on the price of hype. So that could get us up to like $100 hype price if things just keep on trending the way they're trending, which is the bull post.
The main thing also I'm excited about with Hyperliquid is just like you have kind of like the perps opportunity, which I don't know, depending how you value like Binance and all these, like a $50 to $100 billion opportunity, and then you have like the L1 kind of opportunity on top, right? Which is another, I don't know, 100 to 200 billion market, depending how you take the current incumbents. And then I think eventually they'll also do a stable coin. I'm kind of not sure.
Did you read the thread? You literally just summarized the thread. That's it. $50 for the perps, $50 for the L1, and then they can also.
I'm
do
not
a
sure whether the
stable
stable
coin.
coin will be successful, just because that's actually really interesting. It made me more bullish Athena. Like Binance launched their competitor, right? The FD USD, which was like their Athena competitor, like yield earning. You can earn yield on your collateral trading on Binance. And it's a year in, and the thing's at like 2 billion market cap, and that's the biggest exchange, like less than half of Athena. And that's the biggest exchange on earth. I think it's really tough to do this as an exchange because, first of all, like it's hard to get adoption outside of your exchange, and no matter how big you get, like there's always going to be other players. And then also, like you're just incentivized to only tap into the OI on your exchange, which just naturally caps size and makes the yield lower compared to if you tap into all of them. And you're kind of seeing that with all the exchanges other than Binance. I'm pretty sure Athena is in like 3 of the top 5 now, like integrated as yield bearing collateral. But I do think they will do it anyway. They'll do it anyway, and it'll be like a decent size. So it's just like like an L1. It's like Solana with like Radium or Jupiter integrated with like Drift or something integrated, right? It's kind of like the TAM. Cedars, I know you're not bearish, but like you have some qualms with the
Well, there's just like
Hyperliquid
tons of.
executed.
It's just like some things are just stayaways for me, where whatever happens, and that's like Hyperliquid.
You also said that you wouldn't keep any money on like L2s. So it's like I think your risk aversion is pretty high. Also, like once they get native USDC, I think the risk of like a hack goes down a ton.
Why?
Because then they can just freeze it instantly. It's native.
USDC Circle doesn't freeze unless they get a court order, and by the time they get the court order, the funds are already gone.
Instantly?
What? How can they not freeze?
They can, but they don't. They don't.
I'm
Tether actually freezes a lot quicker, which is kind of ironic.
You tag Paulo on Twitter and he's there. Bam, frozen.
Yeah.
I think that they would. Like, imagine the North Koreans took out
Hype
USDC.
definitely
I'm sure
has.
They would have frozen that.
Yeah, Hype definitely has a lot of upside. If I were to say the bear case is first on the valuation is that like people might not give it a 30x multiple if they don't expect it to be around in like a couple of years.
Yeah. So
right?
it's like a 10x right now.
I think obviously there's like a lot more EVM chains coming. But the hype VM and the hype EVM, they don't work like atomically together, right? You're still going between 2 different state machines, and so it's not like perfect. And then you've seen like per protocols come and go a lot, right? And so those would be the main, and then obviously all like the closed source, like you don't really know what's going on. All of those things are other risk factors.
Yeah, I think we've never seen anyone reach remotely this close market share or just like these absolute levels of volume or OI or deposits. So I agree. Like that's definitely a risk. If the volume goes away, it's going to go down. That's why I think it's trading where it is right now. In terms of like the EVM thing, it's like, why would you as a user want to go anywhere else? And like as a builder, right? Like if it's a fast, like people just care that the chain's fast. That's all they fucking care about. So if it's like there's 3 billion or 2.5 billion,
well, no, you care how much you're going to get paid to build on it too.
Yeah, you care about that as well.
I disagree with this. Like I think a lot of the really legit builders in crypto actually care about the values of crypto quite a lot, and actually like there's a lot of selection bias with like generally the worst ones are the ones that just care how fast the chain is or whatever. There's definitely exceptions.
I think like the users have demanded the speed.
Yeah, but there's a reason no one went to build on EOS or like these other chains, and they chose Solana. Like Solana had to do a lot of like really solid engineering to keep decentralization while
those are 2 different time periods though.
Yeah, like I think those
are years apart.
Like people care about speed. That's the only thing people care about right now. So if you have like all this natively built-in stuff that's like hugely successful and you're a team thinking about where to deploy, like why am I going to go to a different EVM chain? versus this one, when it's like they already have all the capital and all the users. People want to be there. I think it's like,
I mean, a lot of people will want to. A lot of people want to build like trading products, right? And you don't want to build on a chain that's competing with you. Like if a lot of people want to build perps, they want to build.
But you
spot,
literally can't compete with what they're doing on the leverage side.
Yeah, removing
they're
perps
orders of magnitudes better.
I think if you're building interesting ancillary financial products, anything not trading, it is compelling to go there. It's not a no-brainer, but it's pretty compelling.
$100 hype.
Yeah, but so I kind of bucket it into like, so you have, that the Buzz Lightyear meme where they're all in Iraq saying the same thing, and it's like the case for BTC Soul hype is probably what makes sense, and just because that's the meme doesn't mean you should be fading it, right? So those are probably just going to be your standout winners, and then people will start searching for something that trails and it's going to get activity. So you're like, I think it kind of happens in waves where you'll have these run first, and then you'll kind of trickle into some of the other ones. And what those are is kind of where the most money can be made, I think, because those are decently liquid, but have higher multipliers than those three majors.
Yeah, I think like Ceteris and Jose, historically, as I've watched, you guys are really good at seeing things like early, like from the tech side, and it's like not my strong suit at all. Just like look more pragmatically, like what does the market like? So in 2023, I was thinking Solana was completely dead. Like 2022, 2023, I remember talking to Ceteris about this because FTX was gone, a lot of their support was gone. I was like, I don't really see this coming back, and Ceteris was super bullish on it because he was, thought the tech was great and he was early there, but something like this where it's like the market has clearly shown what it's demanded in terms of like they just want to, like, people just want a fast chain. This is orders of magnitude more liquid and better than any other per product and spot product. I think it's like pretty clear, like we've reached kind of an escape velocity here versus like it's not like an early stage thing. Like Tia, I would have no idea on, definitely.
Yeah, so this is I was gonna bring this up. This is a good idea of understanding how like assets are very different, right?
Mhm.
And I also don't know why Tia versus Hype became a thing because they're completely different like products altogether. But it's like Tia here. I think Tia at this level over like a 1-2 year time horizon, I think I'll like buying Tia here, right? But if the market turns around, like Hype is gonna wipe the floor versus Tia on a price performance, I would imagine, right? Because it's just very reflexive, and it does have like Celestia still needs to, even though I think the tech is good, like they still need to prove a lot in like actual demand and actual people using it and building out this whole ecosystem. Like Hyperliquid has this, right? And so if you're talking like I think it's like important to understand your time horizon when you're debating different assets, right?
I also think Tia is more of a venture bet, and Hyperliquid is more of a traditional like liquid markets bet.
Yeah,
where I think there's this interesting debate, between sort of Anatoly and ETH people, and Anatoly is like, people only want to trade tokens, like that's the use case for this thing, trade financial assets, and I think if that's the case, Tia's kind of cooked. Like I think a monolithic L1 or a hype type thing is the winner. Like Tia really requires you to believe that people want to do more with blockchains than just trade assets, I think. And personally, I think that's the case. We're going to find a lot of really cool use cases to do with rollups. So that's why I also hold Tia. But I think for the people that are I think hype attracts like the flood, of this world. I'm not referring to you, actually, to the other flood, although you as well. But people who are kind of more pragmatic and also kind of like skeptical about about crypto generally, right? Think everything's a scam or whatever.
Tolly's thing is like these 6 contracts matter, and that's it. And I think the bear case on the modular side is that I see people critique this viewpoint of Tolly, but they don't have examples, right? Their reasoning is, I choose to be optimistic and like I choose to envision there being more use cases, but it's not like there are actually any use cases people have off the top of their mind that are going to come along, right? So it's kind of up to, as of now, Tolly's right. Like he's absolutely right that there's basically 6 contracts that matter, and it's kind of up to the rest of the industry, the world, whatever, to actually build things that are truly unique. And for Celestia, you also probably need a bunch of non-blockchain consumers of your product too, like just people dumping data there.
Can you explain what Celestia is really simply? I know it's hard for you to say this, but really simply.
We have a really good report on it.
Yeah, it's basically
back in 21. I know you don't like to read anymore.
I mean, the whole point of I mean, I'm not gonna say the whole point, but like the original point of blockchains is that anybody could kind of verify that like transactions were essentially legit and stuff, right? And and that also has to do with the data being available, which is what Celestia does. And so all these different blockchains can just dump their data onto Celestia, and then you can do this data availability sampling, which is kind of this complicated. Yeah, see, I can't even explain it in like a simple.
Oh, try.
It's verification. It's like blockchains are outsourcing their verifiability, I guess. Like, and the more blockchains that use Celestia, the more it scales, because
So you
the
can
way
basically
the way
trust-
erasure coding works is that it's like logarithmic, I guess, and so you can sample kind of like less and less. But but this is the problem with Celestia, is that the network effects for Celestia only really come into play when it's massive and it has like a very big economy. And so getting to that point, like if Celestia does reach escape velocity where they have like tons of high value rollups and applications using it, then at that point you can feel more confident on it. But actually getting from 0 to 1 is something they haven't been able to do. It's like legitimately very challenging. But I will say on the other side that they don't really have a real competitor when it comes to like a pure DA layer. And like people have kind of given up on that as a product, right? As being like a DA layer, and just kind of thinking it's a commodity. So the bull case would be if that kind of mindset changes and shifts. Like Celestia is in a very good position to kind of take all that demand if it comes.
So question. So let me repeat it back, my basic understanding. So the current like L2s or something right now have to pay data availability with Ethereum, which is really expensive. And if they don't do that, then you can't really verify the legitness of the transactions.
Well, take an easy example. Say you post it on Duncan's DA layer.
Yeah.
Okay. If you just keep all that data, nobody can verify what happened.
Got it. Yeah. So no one can see like historically that everything is legit.
Yeah.
That
like
happened on the chain.
Yeah.
And I
like
can change stuff or do something malicious.
Well, you can withhold the data, right? And then nobody can progress the chain. And then you could like charge like a ransom to actually give up the data again.
So it's just cheaper than ETH, right? Like that's the big thing. Like right now, all these L2s are using ETH for data availability.
Yeah, and there's it's like a very simple. It takes the other extreme of like it's kind of like how Bitcoin just does money. Like Celestia just does DA. There's no smart contracts or anything. And so there are people that are talking about bringing rollups onto Solana, but it's a bit complicated to actually use Solana as a DA layer because it wasn't built for that. And there's a ton of like competing transactions. They have all their vote transactions. They have all their smart contracts rolling and everything. And so Celestia just keeps it like very clean, right? No like tech debt. And they just basically are continuing to focus on this one thing of growing the blocks bigger and bigger over time, making the validators beefier and beefier, because you can make the validators beefy with like the data availability sampling and everything. And so it's very similar to Solana in the sense that they're scaling with hardware, right? Like they want to use beefy machines. They just want to do it where you can still verify. And so they don't make their blocks bigger until they can keep like those properties.
Yeah,
right?
I actually think I did read this report. It's like, if there's a certain, if like all the transactions are posted, you just need to verify like randomly a few of them to like
Yeah,
see
yeah,
that the whole
yeah.
thing's legit.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
Okay.
sampling.
That's
Yeah,
basically the point. So yeah, we'll
Okay.
see. I mean, they
That
take a
was
very
I think that was a pretty good explanation.
they take a
Simple.
very like extreme standpoint. There's obviously still concerns about like, how much you can, I think the bull case for Celestia is like $1 billion a year of revenue. And then what's it trading at then? Is it trading like 25, 35 bill, right? That's like 10x from here. And so I also think when people are like, how can you be so bullish on Celestia and not bullish on Ethereum? It's like, well, they're kind of like moving in the same direction. And Celestia is just very aggressively making a very good DA layer and is very cheap. And so it's like the
They need to
valuation.
raise prices quite a bit though to get to that level of
Or yeah, like how many chains did they need,
revenue.
or how
Yeah,
many?
they
what was
could
the
raise
price?
prices 100x today, nobody would notice. It's just
That's a good lever.
they need, but they right now, I don't think people should care too much about that. You want to see people actually wanting to use Celestia because that's like hasn't really been proven yet. I think if you see a lot of new teams start to use Celestia, then you feel more comfortable about them being able to like actually change prices later. They have no bargaining power to change prices right now.
So would this be like every company has a blockchain type thing, and then like they all use Celestia? That's like the bull case, or like there just needs to be like a lot of blockchains for very specific use cases of different things, and they all need to be using Celestia for data availability. Is that the bull case?
Yeah, pretty much. I
Yeah,
also think
pretty
though that
much.
Celestia needs to make, and I think they've realized this, they need to make their own like TIA DeFi ecosystem. They need to kind of like in-house, I think, a massive chain that people actually want to use to kind of get the ball rolling. I think we've seen like being neutral and taking a hands-off approach. Like their whole model is build whatever, and it's like you have no ideas almost in a sense, right? And it's similar to kind of like Cosmos Hub was like, oh, anybody can be an app chain, just do whatever you want. I think you need to take a more opinionated approach, and I think they've kind of recognized that.
So like
So
how many blockchains would need to, like there have to be like thousands of blockchains that are actually used, like hundreds of thousands? Like what are we talking to get to that $1 billion number?
I mean, I guess it depends. Like, for instance, I think you can fit 1.3 Solanas on Celestia right now. So it also depends what kind of blockchains,
Oh, that's
right?
not a lot.
It's all
Wait,
going to be
what?
it's all going to at current capacity for Celestia. I mean, Solana has a shit ton of DA, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So like how
so
much revenue would that generate if Celestia was fully maxed right now?
it still wouldn't be.
It's just the
enough.
price per it's set very low, like
Yeah.
0.0001 or something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
But they're going to keep
uh,
increasing their blocks over time. Like this is the point of it, right? Is like
Mhm.
you keep increasing and you keep because as a DA layer, you don't have like a ton of bargaining power to raise prices.
Yeah.
Even Ethereum doesn't have a ton of bargaining power to raise prices on DA. Like teams are not willing to like.
So you're bullish on it here at $3. You're a fan.
Yeah,
Is that
I
3
think-
billion FTV?
Yeah.
yeah.
It's trading at a 3 times multiple, Ceteris.
No, I mean if you three multiple on like a crazy bull case.
3 times 20-year forward revenue.
40, yeah.
Yeah. It's like listen, you need to dream. You need to dream a lot with Celestia.
So just let's move on. Let's move on from Celestia. So we wanted to talk about SIMD. I feel like we've talked a lot already. Maybe we could do the RWA stuff like the Aave and the Ethena. Also, actually, maybe the Ethena one is the most relevant to the Celestia discussion because it kind of is a counterpoint against the L2 thesis, right? If everyone keeps doing their own L1, it kind of defeats the whole point of like the Celestia Initia like app chain. Well, Celestia more so Celestia and Initia thesis to be honest, right? Yeah. So for those who didn't see, Ethena announced a new L1 called Converge. They're partnering with Securitize on it. The idea is there's going to be like big institutions that are going to be validators. Securitize is going to be issuing like I think the wording is Ethena is going to be the default issuance. Ethena chain is going to be the default issuance platform for all their assets, which is like the Apollo Credit Fund, obviously Biddle, and all the other assets that they issue. So and then they brought a bunch of the kind of DeFi Avengers, Aave, Pendle, etc. to Morpho to build with them on this chain. So they're kind of like, it's kind of a vampire attack on ETH. You're like taking all the best DeFi protocols and then taking Securitize, issuing some legit tokenized securities and building DeFi around that, kind of like the grown up DeFi or whatever.
Pretty big announcement, but the price didn't react that much. Like, what do you think?
I agree. It did seem like a pretty big announcement. The price didn't react. I think market's just bad market.
Yeah, didn't really see it. I think it didn't get like properly digested either. I didn't really see it making too many rounds on Twitter.
Alpha?
No, but I think so. I think the important takeaway here is, so Athena's launching this chain, RWA. They didn't choose to do an L2. They chose to do their own L1. And the reasoning behind this is that they have a bunch of banks as validators, essentially. And so could you do this construction as an L2? Yes, you could. But instead of having a centralized sequencer, you would have this shared sequencer with banks, validators. And then at that point, you're reintroducing consensus back in. And if you don't care about kind of like doing interoperability with other chains, or like if you're going to add consensus back in as an L2, at that point, it's almost like, why don't I just become an L1? Because that's a bottleneck. Like a big benefit of L2s is that you can run one sequencer.
Like this is the whole like
consensus
bank chain.
I mean,
thesis,
I agree.
Right?
I do think that I think one of the reasons that the price didn't move is just that this chain has been announced a few times. And I think people are just the market just wants more details on like what the construction is, what it looks like. Cause there's been like a few announcements and it kind of pumped on all of them.
Wait, is this different than that Ethereal thing?
Yeah, that's a DEX.
Ethereal's like the Hyperliquid of Ethena, basically.
True.
All right,
then it'll launch on the chain on Converge. I don't know. I think I'm obviously like a Ethena bull. I'm not going to do the bull case again. I do think that there is an advantage, and I want to wait for the technical details to really opine on it. But I do think the L2 is actually a good construction for what they seem to be aiming to do, where you could still have like a sequencer be the banks and stuff. And you're right that you kind of have consensus anyway. But I think the escape hatch is actually like pretty useful, because otherwise you kind of end up with a private blockchain to some extent, right? Where these validators can seize funds. I assume like Guy's pretty smart. I assume he's thought about this, and something's going to come out next week to explain it. But for me, it almost feels like, like you said, if you're going to do an L2 and have to have consensus anyway, why not do an L1 and capture that premium? But I think chasing premiums in crypto is not smart, honestly, like in general, because I think the irrational premiums don't last long. Like it takes long to build anything, and irrational premiums don't last that long. Like there was an L2 premium, and then with Blast, and everyone was doing their own L2s, and then Blast got absolutely wrecked. And by the time all these L2s launched, there was no premium anymore. It's having your own L2. And it's kind of the same with L1. I just think you want to do the best thing fundamentally for the user experience. And it does feel like having some form of escape hatch for an institutional chain kind of makes sense, right? I don't know.
Yeah. So one thing I guess I'll say on the escape hatch is that they don't actually work. It's actually easier to censor by just making people's transactions fail forever than actually like excluding their.
But you can go back to the checkpoint, no, to the last
no.
checkpoint.
There's an article I'll send you on this. There's actually like if you deposit, for instance, into a money market on an L2, there is no guarantee that you can ever get that money out if the sequencer wants to censor you for the rest of time.
Yeah, because you have to get out of the contract first, right? You have to get out of the contract first.
The only thing you can really get out is an asset issued on the L1 that is not in a protocol or anything. That's the only guarantee you have that you can like eventually get it out. But every other asset you can't. And so it's like, how are you, what's the practicality if you're trying to get out?
It would just be you can get your crypto assets out, right? Yeah, I know what you mean. They're going to be regulated institutional assets anyway. You're not going to be able to get them out anywhere. But I guess the idea would be you obviously your securities and stuff get issued straight on the L2, and so but it doesn't really matter because they're securities anyway. You can't get them out anyway in any meaningful
That's
way.
the thing,
But
right?
the crypto assets would be on L1, and you bridge those over, and like in theory, if they're not encumbered in any contract, you could take them back to L1, right? Like, but I guess what's the point of having them there if they're not in any contract? I need to read this article. Yeah, I haven't like caught up on the escape hatch mechanics in a long time.
Okay, so on it, like that's pretty cool. They're building a lot of stuff. This sounds
They're crushing
big.
it. And he I mean, with this plus Ethereum plus
yeah. So is Ethereum going to be a new token though, or
yeah,
is this going to be a new token? Or are they all?
No, this will likely be ENA secured, and then
ENA will be the L1 token. Ethereum
right.
itself is a new token, but it's going to be distributed to ENA holders similar to like BNB. He sees ENA as like BNB, and the idea is like a lot of stuff's going to launch in the ENA ecosystem, and ENA stakers get a share of all of it or whatever.
Nice.
Yeah, basically.
I see how you switched TIA with BNB there.
TIA?
Wasn't that the whole thesis? Buy TIA at $20 and stake it for airdrops.
Yeah, but that was not a good thesis.
I know. I'm kidding. No, it sounds like they're
actually played out pretty well. Like if you do the math on BNB, like launch pool APR, it was absurd. Like because you got you're actually the only person that gets to dump like the high FTP token.
And they asked for a lot. Like BNB drops like 3 to 5% to those guys.
Scroll gave like 10%, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And literally the launch pool guys just dump on everyone. You know, like they're the only ones that can realize the FTV.
That's why the funding situations on BNB is always so funky.
Here's a question. Some of these L2 tokens are getting like they're starting to get more cheaper and cheaper, right? Scroll, for instance, is trading at like
just on an absolute value, they're getting cheaper, not on like any sort of multiple or anything.
Right, but at a point, and like I don't know if this is the right answer, but let's say, for instance, the EF could buy Scroll for like 50 mil and nationalize it. Is that a good move, or should they just like? I kind of feel like the EF should launch their own rollups and just have all the sequencer revenue go back to L1. Right. I think the reason why they haven't done this is because they didn't want to like play favorites and all this. They want it to be, they want it to be new. Well, yeah, but base rollups base rollups can still be, you can still have some of the funds going to another party. But yeah, like Tyco, for instance, the reason why it's so expensive to use Tyco and the reason why they pay so many fees to L1 is because they're based, right? But no, I am like starting to think, will Ethereum actually nationalize some rollups at some point where it's a rollup, but it has no own token of its own. It's just sequenced by Ethereum.
And then nationalize the perp DEX on the rollup as well. And then
isn't that
and the spot exchange?
It's not like it takes away from the whole credibly neutral thing, right? So that's why people haven't done it. But
that's why that was a big argument in the Cosmos days, like the Atom days, right? Like the Cosmosm, whether they should implement Cosmosm or not. There was things about them acquiring various like osmosis and stuff like this. Yeah, I mean, you're kind of
like these guys aren't practical. Like, I don't feel like they're practical in terms of what people want. It's like very idealistic. I think maybe that is going to end up being the vision, like that's realized. But I just feel like going for like practicality of like what people want right now and then building that is a much better route. Like the ENA and Hyperliquid strategy, build an app people want, build the product people want, and then build all this other stuff is like makes way more sense to me than the other way around.
Yeah. I don't see the EF doing this. I think at some point it would be a good decision. I don't know about Scroll. But some kind of hungry team like Mega ETH would have been awesome if they could afford something like a team like that. Just buy.
Mega ETH is really hype right now. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean something that's like has a narrative that's comparable to like a Solana, where it can be super fast built on ETH.
I saw on the talking list the vibe coding thing. What do you want to talk about that? I thought that was kind of cool.
I asked ChatGPT. I saw everybody talking about vibe coding. I asked ChatGPT what vibe coding was, and it was like casual coding, writing coding for fun,
Yeah,
lo-fi
it doesn't
coding
know.
sessions, putting on some chill music and getting into the zone. I'm like, all right, I'm pretty sure this is not what everyone's talking about.
It's a term coined by Andrej Karpathy about just like coding with LLMs, like coding with Cursor and Claude, where you're basically like not really coding, you're just instructing the model on how to code. And it's a super crazy experience. Like I'm not a coder. I haven't written code in like 10 years. And even then it was like some front end, like CSS stuff. So this has been like a learning curve for me, but it's crazy the stuff you can build, how fast it is. And like, there's a lot of shit that's crazy about it. I mean, the one really crazy thing is it has taste. Like it has the taste that a product manager would have when you're deploying a product. Like I like normally the product when we do in labs, we like wireframe stuff internally, either on paper or using like wireframe. I like to do it on paper, which everyone gets really upset about because I can't draw. But people do it with software, and then you give it to a designer. They turn it into like designs, and then obviously like once the designs are final, then you need a front end engineer to put them into CSS, right? And then to link it up with the back end, all this stuff. With this, I literally described my app idea in one paragraph, and it derived the UX that was like 80 to 90% similar to what I had drawn out. Like it was wild. Like the thing has taste. So that's really crazy. And then the other thing that's crazy is watching, because I've been doing it with a friend of mine, and he's like one of the most beastly vibe coders I've seen. And it's also really interesting. There's like a niche vibe coding community on Twitter who are on the bleeding edge of this stuff, like using all the crazy new tools. And some of the stuff these people build, like insane games, insane websites, like with LLMs is crazy. And the process, like another interesting thing is the process of debugging and working through problems is so interesting because there's some background noise. It's so interesting. You don't actually know the code, right? So like when the thing doesn't run, you get like an error message, but you have no idea what the fuck's going on. And so most of the time you're like sending the error message to the LLM and just telling it, like basically coaching it, like, hey, I got this error message. Come up with, I mean, the please fix this doesn't work that well often. Like what, and the better people, what they do is they literally coach the LLM. So they're like, analyze the error, come up with 5 to 6 different solutions, like think about the trade-offs of each solution and just send me that. Don't execute anything now. And then you're like, okay, now of those solutions, which one should we try first? Like, you're like literally like a coach to this thing, like a teacher / coach, just helping it work through problems. And you actually like
cool.
What you bring is just, and like the better the coder, the better intuition they have for how to solve problems. And so they're much better at coaching these things, which kind of like a post I did today that, like Tiger Woods has a swing coach, right? Like no matter how good this thing gets at coding, it's still going to benefit from a coach, what one would hope at least. But right now it does seem like that's the case. And the shit you can build, like I'm building just like an MVP of this idea I had, and it's like in 2 days, the progress, it's this meta feed thing. It's like a longer conversation, but it's basically just like right now to keep up with the world, you got to like catch up with podcasts and Twitter feeds and group chats and like articles, subscriptions. So the idea with this is you just have, I think in the future that won't be the case. You'll just have an LLM that reads all your favorite content and gives you summaries. So like you just tell it, these are the people I respect in each field. And you just ask like, okay, macro, I want a weekly report with like what Arthur Hayes and Zoltan and like all the whoever the people I respect are in macro. And it just gives it to you, and then you can also like chat to it about it, right? It just keeps it all in context, kind of thing. So I'm building this initially for just like YouTube and podcasts, so you don't have to listen or watch all of them. You could just like ask for a summary or chat to it about the content. Like you don't need to watch your 8-hour Lex Friedman or whatever.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think so. And
not just a hat rack over there.
Yeah, and like I think it's gonna change just how I think LLM wrappers are actually going to be like insanely valuable. I think most of the value will be in these wrappers. Like people used to hate on these wrappers, but I think people are going to be able to just build like automations of workflows that you do with LLMs, like this one, right? and just make them way simpler and charge like massive margins on your cost of inference and indexing the data. And I think you're gonna have like massive businesses that are literally just wrappers. Yeah, and I recommend all you guys try it. Like just spin up cursor. Ideally, have a coder friend, because otherwise there's a lot of like frustration that comes up with just like random.
Yeah, you get stuck on just little things. I've tried this before to make a bot to pull like stuff from CoinGecko, and my friend was able to do it in like 5 minutes. I was getting stuck on just these like little bugs that I know nothing about.
Were you using Cursor and Claude?
We were
before LLMs?
We were using we were using an LM. I think we were just using ChatGPT like 01 or something.
Yeah, Claude's also a lot better, weirdly, than all those. Like I kind of compare them, and most people who vibe code like are just Claude maxis. Yeah.
I feel like on this, there's a Delphi invested in this company, but it's pretty cool. Hytopia, it's like a game where there's like these, people are vibe coding these websites and stuff, but they're also vibe coding games. And so the founder just posted something on his Twitter. His Twitter handle is at IamArcDev, but he basically like vibe coded this Fortnite like COD deathmatch type game in their engine. And he said this took him like 15 hours to do. And doesn't look obviously like a war zone. It's like kind of like a Minecraft voxel style and game engine, but like it has guns, they run around, you respawn, you pick up loot. It's pretty cool that they can make this in like 15 hours. And their whole idea is that they're gonna make like a marketplace to allow like content creators who are like doing this vibe code and game stuff to make a game, monetize, and then like instead of just like messing around with this for a day, because it's fun to post on Twitter, like you can actually put like a couple weeks into these tools. And I have a friend who's building a functionality for it where like you describe in plain text what you want the game to be, and it'll actually work on that like in the engine. It'll like create that game in the engine. So Delphi's invested in that.
And it's just so early because like there's a bunch of like prompt scaffolding that makes the LLM so much better. Like for whatever reason, if you tell it like imagine you're a X, like senior software engineer or like economist, depending if you're doing research, it'll just do a way better job. And like there's just prompt scaffolding you do that makes its responses way better. And like people are only just kind of scratching the surface of that.
And like when you're coaching it, does it actually get better? Like for future use? Like when you say like, okay, think through this, and then like the next time, like would it know how to handle that error more easily?
No, I don't. Not right now. I think they are like Cursor and Claude are definitely using the data, and like they have a bunch of people just like sending basically pair programming with the LLM and sending like labeled data sets to it to make it better. But I don't think it that's actually an issue right now with it. It's hard to have like the thing you'd have with an algorithm where it can like improve or learn your preferences. Like, really, the context window is the only thing you can use for that. But yeah,
because I was talking to the Hytopia guy, and he says like they're basically doing the same thing where you have like a text to games. You type in like this is my game mode idea, or like this is the world I want to build, and then the game will create it. But as they have but that pulls like references from other games that have been created. So as that library like gets bigger, then like you'll be able to do more and more complex things by just saying like, hey, spawn me in this map with like this gun.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was cool that it's like iteratively building on each other. It sounds like the LMM's slightly different thing, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Guys, you want to talk about anything else? Do you want to talk about the Aave thing or SIMD or more AI really. Stuff, or should we call it?
This is good right now.
Probably just call it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Solid 15-minute Hyperliquid chill.
Oh, the other thing is if you're building something, and just the last thing, we're doing the accelerator. We're doing an accelerator with Delphi Labs, AI crypto accelerator. It's backed by Solana, Ethereum Foundation, and Base. So basically have access to everyone in the top crypto ecosystems. You have a bunch of top mentors. You get up to 500K in funding. No ownership required to give up to just join the accelerator. And then there's a demo day at the end with all the top investors in the space. So we did our last one with Near, and companies raised like 20 million plus off the demo day. So highly recommend applying, whether you have like an idea or not, or whether it's just like we have a bunch of ideas for stuff you could build with AI. Yeah, so if you're building something in AI, building something in crypto or in the overlap, please apply. You have until the 26th of March to do so. Yeah, definitely worth it.
Sweet. That sounds cool. So 20 million last time in funding? That's a good
Yeah.
amount. So how many
Yeah.
projects was that?
It was six projects.
Nice.
Yeah.
And is that like a mix of Delphi and Near or like other VCs?
There's actually A16Z did some, Cyberfund did some, I believe Dragonfly did one of them. So they raised from a few different people, and then a bunch of other smaller VCs too.
Nice.
And we did some too, obviously. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks very much for tuning in. I thought this was a good one, actually. There's some stuff we can clip here. We should make sure we do that. And yeah, see you all in 2 weeks for another episode of the Hive Mind.
Yep.
Cheers.
See everyone.
See ya.